You see, a lot of the diseases produced by vaccines, the public has no clue that they're connected. So when we say, oh, we protected 25 children against complications by measles, well, at the same time, you produce juvenile diabetes in thousands of children. You produce asthma in tens of thousands of children. You've induced tumors in thousands of children. None of that's counted because the public has no clue that that's connected to these vaccines. But there's compelling evidence of a connection. For instance, the SV40 virus contamination of the polio vaccine back before 1963. It's estimated that this virus is responsible for a great number of tumors, including brain tumors in children.
They don't debate that, by the way. For those that, I mean, you're not just saying this, doctor. That's been on record for decades, but it's a little quiet secret.
Well, it's in the medical literature. It's quite well accepted. And it's accepted that a tumor I dealt with a lot called a medulloblastoma, which is a horrible tumor and used to be 100% fatal in these little children. Well, we know SV40 induces medulloblastoma. And so all of these perfectly normal children that develop that tumor, that SV40-induced tumor, well, how do you count that? The parents weren't told that, well, you know, this came from that polio vaccine that you got because it's passed through generations. And SV40 goes from generation to generation to generation. From now on, there's no way to remove it.
Let me raise this point to you. This is murder. We've done whole shows on the eugenics angle. At a certain point, well, you said it, we've got to expose these people and then demand that grand juries start indicting them. And people are like, oh, they're the medical mafia, you can't do that. Once this idea gets out, that's why they're now, because they're getting exposed, they're admitting it, trying to just condition everybody that it's okay because they're openly talking about it. I mean, it's time to bring these folks to justice.
Well, this is why they're mandating these things, because they know the public's waking up to the dangers. So now they want to take that option away from you, that you're going to do it whether you want to or not, or we'll take your child away from you by the social services, and we'll forcibly vaccinate your child, just like they did in Maryland, where they forcibly vaccinated in a courtroom 1,000 teenagers, giving them 19 vaccines. Now, the judge was in violation of the law. He is not a physician. For him to order someone to get 19 vaccines, which clearly the indications say...
At one time, how about this? I don't mean to interrupt, but this is so incredible. How, until 5 years ago or 3 years ago, as you know, the H1N1, they said never give a pregnant woman vaccines. Now they're on the news saying, pregnant women, get your shot, it's good. I mean, they're trying to kill people.
Well, the thing about this, I've really studied this intensely, and there's a lot of research showing that if you stimulate the immune system and a pregnant woman during certain times of the pregnancy, you dramatically increase the risk of that baby developing schizophrenia or autism later in life. So this child, when it grows up and it's 20 years old and develops schizophrenia, it's most likely due to that series of vaccines that was recommended by the government, the CDC, and the pediatricians, American Academy of Pediatrics. Now, this is solid research, and we know it's not due to the infectious organism. It's due to stimulating the immune system. And the very immune component, interleukin-6, that the vaccine causes a dramatic elevation of, is the culprit. It's what's causing these children to develop this schizophrenia. Well, if you vaccinate every pregnant woman in this country with this vaccine or series of vaccines, we're going to have an explosion of schizophrenia in 10 to 15 years from now.
Sure.
And a lot more autism.
Just like women who worked in factories that had a lot of lead and mercury, they would have, almost everybody in the factory would have schizophrenic children. It's just well known. It's so diabolical. It's so, and of course I interrupted you. You're talking about, that was on the news, dogs barking, SWAT teams, no law, you got to take shots. And I had the state attorney on who ordered it. And I said, sir, there's no law. And he goes, you ought to be a lawyer. And I said, no, I'm not a lawyer. I just know there's no law. And he goes, well, you're right, but we didn't tell him that. By the way, I don't vaccinate my children. And he started laughing. And I was like, how is that cute? They get off on deceiving people. I mean, it was outrageous, doctor.
Well, I had written an article in the paper in Maryland saying that the reporters need to ask the governor who was behind this if he vaccinated his children if he had these vaccines. The reporter asked him that, and he refused to answer. He said, "That's my private business."
Well, look at Germany, where they have the, quote, clean vaccines for the military because they refuse to take the regular stuff.
Yeah, I mean, they're all taking special vaccines, and they're avoiding these adjuvants that they know cause problems. And I propose over Mike Adams' program that we should say, by law, all the CDC scientists and all those proposing this and the CEOs of Merck Pharmaceuticals and these other pharmaceutical companies should have to take every vaccine they recommend forcibly before they can recommend it to the public. Now, I guarantee you, if you went to the president of Merck Pharmaceutical and said, "I want to give you 26 vaccines the way they give it to children the first year of their life," he would jump out of a window to get away from you.
I tell you, that's why they may not ever make it completely mandatory. They're just saying the school's going to shoot your kid up and not tell you because they don't ever want it to be totally mandatory because they know. In fact, doctor, and then we'll go to a few calls and let you go, and I appreciate your time. And one of the other alternate websites is BlaylockWellnessCenter.com, BlaylockWellnessCenter.com. But before we take a few final calls here with you, I have dug up mainstream articles where the communist Chinese will not take any vaccines. This is even in the LA Times, where they have secret gardens only growing non-GMO. They will not eat MSG. They will not drink aspartame. They're obsessed. The Rockefellers, the Queen of England, I've got articles on all of them. The Monsanto factories, their engineers have special cafeterias. This goes back 10 years, and they refuse to eat any GMO. And it turns out across the board, the elites know what they're doing. You add that to all their documents admitting they're doing this to us, it's open and shut. We've got them from one end to the other. This is a criminal conspiracy of medical genocide through the system, and they've just been beta testing it so far. Now I see them accelerating the program.
Absolutely. And you know, I get responses from Chinese doctors. They want to know about this. I get a response from European doctors. They're terrified of this. When I did this, worked with a scientist in the Czech Republic, I wrote a number of articles for her, and she translated them into Czech. And it was so overwhelming to the public, they were refusing to take this H1N1, and they ended up having to destroy $10 million worth of the H1N1 vaccine. The president of the Czech Republic refused to take it from reading the articles I had written. And the head of their CDC, she was telling everyone, you need to take this vaccine. They found out she refused to take it.
Look, if we just keep fighting, we're going to win, sir. I'm sorry, go ahead.
Well, it's just a double standard, and the public needs to understand it. It's kind of like the Congress. They don't want to be in Social Security, but they want to lock you into it. We have our own Social Security system. Well, it's the same thing. We don't eat this GMO food. We don't drink fluoride. We don't consume MSG like you do. That's just for the cattle, what they consider the cattle, and they think of us like cattle or Social Security numbers. We're not really human. We're expendable. And that's this whole group think, this idea that you're just part of the masses, and the masses don't really matter. It's the public good, and we decide what's the public good. Well, that's what they do in the Soviet Union under communism and Nazi Germany. They decide what's the public
Exactly.
good.
It's a total replay. Dr. Blaylock's our guest for just a few more minutes. Our site's Infowars.com and Prisonplanet.tv. And when you support the broadcast by spreading the word about the show, buying books, videos, supporting our sponsors, you allow this to continue. Think about what we're doing right now. We are having a huge effect. Dr. Blaylock's material is read across the world by even heads of state. My information, I've had number 3 in the Japanese government on. I've had members of Congress. They're waking up. All the time I get Walter Jones on, or I get other Congress people on. They're listeners. We are really having an effect. And the earlier caller said, reach out to doctors with this info. That's what I found. My dad is incredibly smart, oral surgeon, dentist, but he'd have arguments and go, look, fluoride's not bad. You need some sodium fluoride. They wouldn't tell us to do this. And I gave him the literature a decade ago. And he went, this is toxic waste. It's more than just fluoride. And it's a toxic acid. And, now he tells people. So the point is, doctors and dentists and people don't imagine that those above them are evil. So they just trust because they're good people. And people have to stop being so trusting.
Exactly. I would recommend that your listeners read an article that's posted on my website called Managed Truth, which I had published in the Surgical Neurology International Journal. But it describes how we got here and what this is all about, its origins. And I also have an article on there about neuropharmacology as a Soviet weapon against the United States, which is all about mind-controlled drugs and the drug problem we have in the United States and why we have it and what they're doing with it. Well, it's not just the Soviet system that's doing it. It's also the CIA, the NSA. They're also using these mind-controlled drugs.
And they're now out in the open. Let's talk to Sergio in California, listening on XM Channel 166. Sergio, welcome.
Hey, thank you, Alex. Just wanted to make a quick comment and then ask Dr. Blaylock a question. My comment is just for the listeners to know, mainly parents, because I'm an uncle, I'm not a father myself, but I've learned a lot from helping to raise my nephews and being around them, and to hear what's going on and how these psychopathic scum are just targeting the most innocent of our people and going after them. It should really piss off the parents out there who are listening right now, and they need to do something to take action.
Yeah, I agree. We've got to warn people, and I'll be honest, when I talk about these subjects, I have a lot of things going through my mind about what I'd like to do to people, but that's why instead of just fantasizing about that, we need to get out there and reach out to people, because the info is what's going to, believe me, once we wake enough people up, we're going to send all these people to prison. There's going to be new Nuremberg trials, everything, but we've got to believe in that and do it. What's your question for Dr. Blaylock?
Definitely. But anyways, my question was kind of off the cuff, more of a general health question. I was wondering if, actually for you too, if what you guys think about microwaves and about microwave food, and if you have a microwave in your house.
Okay, let me, I do for like heating up water and stuff. It does break down the molecular structure and destroy the ring structures from what doctors have told me in nutrition. Is Dr. Blaylock, you want to stab at that?
Well, Dr. Becker has done the most studies on microwave radiation and the effects on human health, and it's pretty devastating, and it is important. I would avoid microwave radiation as much as possible. Yeah, I think it's a health hazard, and as one of your callers said, these things are interacting. For instance, they found out that if you vaccinate an animal and then years later you expose them to a pesticide toxin, they produce infinite greater brain damage than they would ordinarily. So there's this interaction, a toxic interaction of different things like the GMO foods, the MSG, the fluoride, the aluminum, the adjuvants.
There's no doubt. We lead the world in every disease, every allergies are just epidemic. Let's take one more quick call here for Dr. Blaylock, or maybe two. Robert in Texas, you're on the air with our guest.
Yes, diagnosed with diabetes today and 243 blood sugar level, and it's a VA doctor over off of Montopolis. Just wondering if you got anybody in Austin or what I can do, because he wants to give me a shot for my immune system, something every 5 to 10 years.
Yes, sir. I'm not going to give you medical advice, but I would immediately go off all processed foods, all GMO, and I would immediately go on vitamin and mineral powders, and I would see if you can control that yourself before they start putting you on stuff, because then from what I've read, I'm no doctor, what doctors have told me, once you